Laugh 7. Ambrose complains to Hilda that lately his magic is weak and hasn't been worth anything, for no reason at all. Hilda says what he needs is some of her special affair to strengthen his magic. She says she'll leave some on the kitchen table for him to get before he goes home, and he still looks sad because he's embarrassed. The only reason which his magic wouldn't work is if they were out of it, or in a place where they can't use it. If it was something that just happened as he got older, Hilda and Zelda would be having this problem. He should say that he's got no witch virus. Sabrina wants to enter Salem in a cat show, and he's relatable, thinking sarcastically, big deal. After all, this plot point's been done to death. Sabrina plans ahead by packing some of his cat food in this container, which he thinks he loves, but he actually hates. So, Salem's gonna get his magic medicine, right? Ambrose mistakes the cat food for the magic medicine, and Sabrina sees the container meant for Ambrose, and assumes she's just getting forgetful lately and forgot which color container was meant for Salem. Sabrina's actually smart and self-aware enough to really not expect her cat to win the pet show, which is a nice change of pace for most of these plots. She just wants to enjoy the show instead. She gives him the magic medicine and decides to leave to go register. So by the 3rd page, Salem's finally got magic. Also, he's blue in some places, which must be a part of the magic medicine's effect. I thought the point of the magic medicine was to strengthen magic you already had. It wouldn't give you some out of nowhere. Why do witches care that much if they run out of magic then, if they could just take some of this medicine right away to get the full powers of a witch? Salem wishes the cage away and wishes for female cats to sweetly nuzzle against them. Then he wishes for the first prize trophy. Would a normal cat even care about that? It'd make more sense if he did this after losing the pet show. Meanwhile, we see a depressing scene where Ambrose wants to get to know a pretty woman better, and takes Salem's awful cat food. Sadly, the woman just calls him a pompous creep and tells him to get lost for daring to socialize with her. Well, he was better off without her, but he did come off as self-centered instead of just asking to get to know her better. Then an unlikable man in a ridiculous pink suit grabs Ambrose, and Sabrina comes home with every award in the cat show, while Ambrose ends the story being chased after by a ridiculous amount of people. Too bad the story doesn't end with Hilda reversing time to undo all of that unfair nonsense. This depressing story was about Ambrose getting useless cat food while Salem gets the magic medicine meant for him. So Salem gets the trophies right away while Ambrose ends up bullied by people completely overreacting to him wanting to get a girlfriend. I suppose he did deserve some comeuppance because what he wanted to do in the first place was cast a love spell on that woman. And it's hard to blame the woman for not liking his pickup line, but I still felt bad for him for that bad luck he didn't need. It was creative how the story came up with a lame excuse for Ambrose to need that magic morsel, and it was a brand new excuse for Salem getting magic, so it was worth a slower pacing where I had to spend time explaining how he got magic. But sadly, I think the beginning was the only part of the story I kinda liked. It was nice of Hilda to offer to help him with no second thought. It was a nice humanizing moment showing what a good family can have, and it was all for nothing. Betting me 168. Sabrina says that Andrew is one fresh warlock as she's standing in front of a witches' school bulletin. Huh? Apparently this is a universe where she's going to a witch high school. She says she went out with them last week and he didn't behave like a gentleman and is all hands. Is she back with Harvey or not? Then she says she's got the perfect girl for him. It's so considerate of her that she's the reason he ends up with that girl at the end. It's lucky for him that he got together with another person with multiple arms. He doesn't explain why they have multiple arms when they're just witches and warlocks when most of them don't make themselves that way. Presumably just to avoid social ostracization by other members of their race. I have to assume these two have a rare mutation that their old family has. And they're miraculously too stubborn and proud to just cast a spell to have just 2 arms to not be treated differently anymore. They can cast a spell to get 4 arms again whenever they want to take advantage of it. Betty's Diary 18. Sabrina enjoys the island resort on her vacation, but Hilda's bored, and summons a genie to get some excitement. A volcano erupts, and rather than her getting rid of it herself, she asks the genie to bring them some boredom. That was a funny line. Genie, bring us some boredom. I like how quickly she changed her mind. Benny and Veronica 11. Sabrina's on a cruise with her aunts, and it's nice to see that all of them are enjoying it, even Hilda. Hilda says the ship's crew really made them feel at home as witches because they gave them broom-like things to fly on. She would think they did that on purpose because she'd know that mortals aren't supposed to know about witches. Laugh 8. Esmeralda complains that there's stuffed animals in the museum and uncharacteristically feels sorry for them. I don't understand this character. She goes from pure evil to good at the drop of a hat with no consistency. Why does she care about the animals if she doesn't care that she's gonna endanger people if she brings the animals back to life? She makes an excuse to go back to the stuffed animals by saying she left her comic there. And Sabrina doesn't insist on staying with her while she'd go get it, which wouldn't have happened. So Esmeralda conveniently gets left alone and casts a spell to bring the animals to life anyways and turn the glass into sand. And I assume the reason we had to see so many panels before this first is that Sabrina would have interrupted her if she was with her, so she couldn't just do this right away. Obviously, she could easily get people killed with this spell. And Sabrina knew she shouldn't have trusted her, she had no excuse for it. Despite being in a dangerous situation, Sabrina wastes time telling Esmeralda to come out instead of thinking to freeze time and zap away the animals, or at least do that. She sees Esmeralda riding on an elephant, and then wastes time trying to get Esmeralda to undo the spell rather than just undoing it herself for some reason. She says that the stuffed animals need to be there so people can study them and learn about them. Or the museum could have just had fake sculptures of the animals instead of preserved dead ones. I hope this is too morbid to still be the case. Sabrina says the animals need to be stuffed so that people will realize how important it is to protect living animals. Sure, it's convenient that the animals aren't attacking them. I assume Esmeralda had a part of her spell be that they wouldn't attack her and Sabrina. Conveniently, someone who's able enough to make dangerous animals stampede in a museum still gets convinced to undo the spell. Sabrina wisely decides to leave with her and calls her mature as she's driving her home. And it turns out one of the animals is in the trunk of the car all of a sudden. This story by Bill Gallagher, the first proper Sabrina story by a writer of the 90s comic, was about Sabrina taking Esmeralda to the museum for no reason, while letting her keep her powers when she should know she can't be trusted. Go figure, she uses magic, turning the stuffed animals on display into live ones because she doesn't care about mortals. It's written with the same plot holes as a lot of the other stories with Esmeralda and Sabrina. Sabrina made an idiot out of herself the entire story, stretching believability in the process, trusting her to be alone and not undoing the spell instantly. It was nice that she could talk her into undoing it, but in all that time people were in danger, and I have to assume that part of her spell is that the animals won't hurt them, or else it'd make no sense that they survived this. I do like that Esmeralda has a soft side because it makes her more interesting and easier to stand than the other evil cousin Sabrina had in the series. But it's hard to figure her out. Betty's Dowry 19. Somehow Ambrose wonders what to wear to the beach and has to be told he should wear a swimsuit. He takes forever to change, even though he's a warlock, and he somehow thinks he should look like a guy covered in seaweed, or look like a green sea monster man. That didn't make any sense. Laugh 9. Sabrina wonders what some girls at the park bench are finding so funny and decides to eavesdrop on them as she's inexplicably walking home carrying groceries with her aunts, when you'd think they would just warp home as soon as no one would be looking. Sabrina finds out that the girls are laughing at her aunts for their outfits. Well, most people would react like that, to be fair. That doesn't necessarily mean these are bad people most of the time. Sabrina uses magic to send water at them. It's not very fair to them because it's not like they said it to her aunts' faces. Zelda somehow doesn't realize it's magic, and Sabrina realizes those women at a point and her aunts should update their wardrobes. She should have thought this a long time ago, so she and her aunts waste time talking about the fact that their clothes are outdated. They were bought in 1655. Sabrina says she'll go to the mall to meet the girls, and Zelda considers using one of Sabrina's fashion magazines to update her wardrobe. Uncharacteristically, even Hilda considers doing that. Hilda looks terrible with her new look, though I mainly say that because her face is still ugly. Zelda's still ugly as well, but she's ironically better looking than her. They decide to go surprise Sabrina at the mall. Hilda says her witch radar was right, and they're right over there. Veronica asks what happened to them as they leave, and Sabrina says that it's a little fashion advice gone haywire. Huh? I assume the reason they took so long to do this is that they've spent enough time with her that she's finally worn them down. because otherwise they would have done this much earlier. Sabrina says she'll have to get them back to normal before someone tells them they look ridiculous. Why does she think they look ridiculous? I mean, this is a 70s continuity comic. How am I supposed to know that these outfits are the ridiculous ones? Does she think they're still outdated? Granted, I don't know how I'd feel about seeing these 70s and 80s outfits in real life as opposed to in a cartoon. Sabrina goes home and sees her aunts, who are wearing new outfits, where Hilda looks better than before. Sabrina tells them that she's holding a gift that's the latest in fashion directly from Paris. And she walks up to them with the witch outfit. So they completely fall for it. It makes sense because they like those outfits anyways, so they just want an excuse. It's a less mean ending than them having people tell them they look ridiculous. I thought people would say that they still look ugly. This story was about Sabrina's aunts dressing like modern people, at least from the comics perspective. And Sabrina thinks they look ridiculous, which could have easily been avoided if they made themselves look pretty too. Unlike the comedy page where this gag first came up, Sabrina's a bit more character because she's polite. So she has enough tact to not just tell them to go back to their witch outfits immediately, and instead tries to come up with a clever plan to trick them way too easily into thinking that the witch outfits are up to date. They would figure out that they were lied to eventually because they wouldn't see anyone else dressed like that. Since it's more in character for Sabrina to be nicer, it is worth it that it's an entire story this time and not just a short half page. Life with RJ 268. Sabrina loves this Transylvanian resort she's at with her aunts, which has monsters in it, even though Transylvania is a place on Earth. So there's a place called this in the other realm. She likes the food, and doesn't bother explaining what activities she likes so much. So oh well. Hilda likes the broom service the best. Why wouldn't the person cast a spell to clean the room in an instant, using magical artifacts to save on magic instead of having a broom? RJ 360. Hilda says that her cousin Melba's gingerbread house looks so different. This reminds me of her relative with a gingerbread house from the 70s comic. Now the gingerbread house is made of tofu and sprouts because the pretty witch inside it is into health foods. It misses the point of having a gingerbread house if it's not made of that. But I like that there's a pretty witch in one of these for once. Even if the witches are from another planet, it still isn't that believable that most of them would be ugly. RJ's Palace and Gals 200. Sabrina feels sorry for a dog and cat outside in the rain near a vegetable garden. Uses magic to make them come indoors, but for no reason the scarecrow came to life and wanted to come inside too. Betty Me 170. Sabrina tells Hilda her school bus conked out, but it's a school bus to the Witches' Academy. So Hilda says the driver will have to switch to their emergency transportation, and we see a bunch of people on one broom, only some of which are obvious witches. Since when does she go to a Witches' Academy and take a bus there? She doesn't need to. It must be another universe. Betty and Veronica 13. Hilda shows Sabrina books of spells, somehow saying Egyptian spells, as if Egyptians are a supernatural race. They'd have no reason to have different spells of their own, and asks her which are the worst spells. And according to her English teacher, the worst spells are in her composition. It only sort of makes sense because she's prone to making mistakes. But that's because she's not thinking before casting spells. It has nothing to do with whether she's a good speller. But this is a callback to a 70s story where she was bad at spelling and wrote Sorcerer of Milk instead of Saucer of Milk. So it's sort of in character, but it's so confusing because she should know how to spell well by now. And it's also in character for her to make puns. RG Giant Series 586. Out of nowhere, Sabrina walks towards a door that says Principal Hilda's Witch School. It's odd that we'll barely see this idea, and it was just for a comedy page. But she's already an authority figure over her home as it is. She tells Sabrina their new six-eyed student is doing great. I know we're supposed to assume witches are always used as supernatural creatures because of so much exposure to them, but I think that six-eyed people would still be really rare to them. So it would make more sense if she was bullied a lot, or at least ignored. And Hilda's not aware of it. She says she's the best hall monitor they ever had, and the girl looks confident. I love that it took advantage of her having so many eyes. Usually that's just a thing to make non-human looking aliens look different. She looks really freaky though, so it'd actually be better if she didn't look human at all. RJ Giant Series 587. Someone throws something at bottles and bets nobody else could get 6 with 1 ball. Sabrina doesn't need a ball to do that, using magic to win the prizes and walking away freaking them out. She knows she can get away with this because nobody would believe them, I guess. It was cool to see. Betting me 171. Sabrina and Hilda are flying to the witches' convention instead of simply warping. Well, it would make sense to make a rule against that, because witches could telefrag themselves with each other if they're all warping to a place. I wish that was explained. Then Hilda expects me to believe they'd have room air traffic. But couldn't they just fly above or below the others to get past it? They can fly into space and survive with their magic. They've done it before. It's interesting because this would happen, but it wouldn't be a problem. Jughead 8. We see Hilda wear an old-fashioned bathing suit. At least it's purple. It looks a lot better than the yellow one she had the last time this joke was done. She says she'll get into something modern, but it's not getting into if all she does is give herself sunglasses. She wouldn't think she's with it because she can see what Sabrina's wearing, so she'd know that's what she's supposed to wear. But it was worth it to do the joke again because we got to see her look a lot better than she did last time. RJ's Pals and Gals 201. A mailman tells Sabrina that Hilda's delicious soup really cured his cold, and we see the gross ingredients it's made out of. So the comic really has no continuity. The witches really do have no excuse for having colds. Witches seem to be able to zap up anything. Then Hilda's happy because she finally got the ultimate witchcraft status symbol. A broom phone.